Okay, we're up. Okay, thanks very much everybody for joining. We're up to 27 now, which is great. We are very pleased. I'm very pleased that we've got Michael Ryan with us today. Michael is a what I would call a transformation specialist, guru, whatever you want to say. He's based down in Southern Ireland, and a number of people have recommended that we get him on. Well, you know, we didn't have anything better to do, so I thought, well, I might as well ask him. But yes, I've been through the presentation with him first thing this morning, and it is absolutely on message as to what we've all been saying that we should do. So I think it's a good thing that he's on. So I'm just going to share my screen now, and here we go. So I just want to welcome Michael to the session. Hopefully everybody can see my screen now, and over to you, Michael.
Good morning, everybody, and Chris, thanks for inviting me on. Much appreciated. Although I am a consultant, I've been listening to the call for the last 10 minutes. I have no intention of attempting to sell you anything. So as Chris explained, my background is finance shared services, finance transformation. So over the last 25 years or so, I've been involved either directly as a consultant with the Big Four, working as an interim for myself, or working in industry for large corporates delivering shared services. During that period of time, I've managed teams up to and in excess of 200. And I've also set up a sideline as a conference speaker, which I call Ryan Talks, Change Happens. And the Ryan Talks also has delivered to audiences in excess of 200. However, this is novel this morning. This is the first time in which I've delivered one of these. So first of all, thanks for having me. And I'll be delighted to see the output, see how I get on with this forum as opposed to my usual method. So what does Ryan Talks do? Ryan Talks aims to make you stop and think. So it gives you something that actually jars the mind and makes you go, maybe I should rethink this a little. So myself and Chris had a chat about 2 weeks ago, before Boris came on air last week and announced that most people should start to go back to work where they don't have remote working capability. And of course, this has led to a flood of people saying, can we continue to work as we did before? Or sorry, as we have done during the course of the lockdown. So really and truly, the question is the genie out of the bottle? Is remote working the new normal? As someone who's been a consultant and who's lived out of a suitcase and carrying his laptop since 2005, I actually don't think it should be the new normal. And I'd like to challenge that as we go through this. So there's challenges all around in this, because this is the first time I've ever presented in which I don't just put up one slide and then talk and walk into the audience. But a good thing from your perspective is I can't put my finger on you and ask you a question. Yeah, so this is probably the least nervous audience I've ever faced. I also can't see it all in one go. I've also got to give up control, which is one of the key themes that we'll actually talk about as we go through this presentation, because I'm not the one driving the slides. Chris is. So whether Chris is in tune with my mouth and my brain, I don't know. We're going to find out over the course of the next 20-25 minutes. We will touch upon what is a very interesting and fascinating topic and that everybody is interested in at the moment. There's a lot in it to discuss, and I've distilled it into about 6 or 7 slides, but I'm going to give you the opportunity afterwards. If anybody wishes to contact me directly, my contact details are on the end of the last slide. You can phone me throughout the rest of the day for any part of this you'd like to discuss in more detail rather than in the time slot we've got. So, Chris, next slide. So the big question is, and if I was standing in front of you as an audience, I'd be looking at you and there'd be a few wry smiles at this stage amongst the audience. How was your lockdown? Did you have a good lockdown? What was it like for you? So if you think about it, for me, it's been the opportunity, as I'm sure it has been for many of you, to reconnect with family, to be there at the start of the day, not to have to do the dreaded commute. I'm not spending 90 minutes to get to work. I get to have breakfast with my wife and kids. I even can have lunch with them. I can even have them shouting at me while I'm on a call and I'm going, I don't care what's for lunch. You can tell me afterwards. I'm talking to someone important. The kids, of course, naturally will go mad. And I've had to get used to the fact that I'm communicating with people via this medium, or I'm doing what I prefer, which is basically just a phone call, because people focus less on the picture and more on the words that are actually being said. And for some people, this is great. Some people will have had a great lockdown. There's some people who potentially don't have a whole scale of family responsibilities and don't suddenly have the kids pulling out of them all day long. From a parent's perspective, they're not racing to get to crash in the morning to drop the kids off in order to go to school. The other thing that's actually happening out of this is that the lockdown is actually potentially bringing us closer together. It has pushed us further apart from an organizational terms, in physical terms, but it has brought us closer together as families. The running joke with all of that is, as you had before I came on, you've now got your wife cutting your hair. My wife threatened to cut my hair, and I said, no chance, you're not getting near that. I'm going to wait until June. It's 5 weeks overdue, I can assure you. You end up reimagining the family unit. And there's been some interesting quotes that have gone through all of the lockdown experience, and I'm sure you're all in WhatsApp groups that send you jokes. But one of the great quotes is, we live in a society, we don't live in an economy. This is actually true. So we've actually come back to basics. The lockdown has brought us to a situation where you're back in the family unit. You're back with your spouse, wife, husband, partner, whatever, and you're back with your children. Or there's a flip side to this for those who actually aren't part of a family unit, is that they actually are potentially more isolated. So one of the other key terms that's come out of the whole experience is the mental health impact on people concerned. There are a lot of people who enjoy going to work for the social interaction, the cut and thrust of the job itself that they're responsible for, interacting with their colleagues and teammates, and actually being allowed to roam across an organization and talk into different departments. So your experience of your lockdown completely depends upon what your background and context is. Before I go on to the next slide, for me, the lockdown will always be the power washer. Because from the day this started, I have about 7 houses around me, and practically every man in it decided that 8 o'clock in the morning was a good time to unleash his power washer on the rest of us to listen to. So as long as I live, the pandemic will be the power washer. So Chris, we kindly go on to the next slide. Now, I listened to a few of the voices before we started, and I'm pretty certain that everybody on the call recognizes who this is. So this is Bruce Forsyth and the generation game. And as we all go through, following the Prime Minister's announcement the other day, the return to work is a generation game. No matter what way I've thought about this, and there's a lot of people focusing on different aspects of it, for me, it always comes back to the person, to the individual themselves, and the people effect of what's going on. Yeah, we have technology challenges. Can we get the kit set up? We obviously have the health and safety aspect of making sure that nobody further gets sick and ensuring that that's the case. But actually, to be honest with you, this comes down to the individual, the person themselves. So it's them and what stage they're at in their life and their career, which is going to affect their attitude to back to work. So we'll move on from Bruce to the next slide. So what you have here is an indication of the happiness level versus the level of responsibility in an organization. So the millennials, the youngest members, who generally form the base of the pyramid in any survey that's conducted across a workforce, they're actually thrilled at the moment. When they go looking for a job, the 2 things that they ask an employer is, what's your corporate social responsibility? What's your carbon footprint? What's your impact on the environment? That's all wrapped into one. And the second one is, can I flexibly work? This is the generation that believes it can work from its phone in Starbucks. And it doesn't matter when it's doing it or how it's doing it or whether it needs somebody else to be there. These guys are actually cock-a-hoop at the moment. They're turning around and they're going, we told you we were right. Now, when you look at it from an organizational perspective, and some of the big names that are out there that populate Silicon Valley, for example, such as Google and Twitter and so on, they've come out in recent days to say that their staff will not be back in the office during 2020. And whether you're back in the office or not is the big question. So we move on to the second group, which potentially is the audience that I'm speaking to on large this morning, middle management. And we played around with the emojis, and so here we have the stress book, because you're actually still expected to deliver, and you've completely changed how it is that you're delivering and how it is that you're managing. You've had to do that in large instances where you have to get used to a new work environment. It's not actually brilliant to work from home. As a consultant who's been doing it from 2005, I actually also have a second office which is down the road, which completely removes me from the family environment in order to work. And it removes the opportunity where someone's roaring up the stairs at me going, there's somebody at the door, you need to come down. Or one of your friends rocks up and thinks, well, I'm here so I can talk to him. No, well, I'm not, I'm on a call. These are the ones who have the responsibility for their family, for the children, and also for the teams that they manage. And on average, I'd say most of the people on the call manage in excess of 6 people. Most organizations do not do a good job of ensuring that the spans of control are straightforward enough, and I'm sure you have responsibility for more than 6. Then we go on to the executive. Now, these are the guys that are actually, they're sitting there at the moment going, okay, they're probably older, possibly into their 50s, they're at the executive level, they're responsible for an organization's strategic direction. And they're having to do this for the first time because the government told them to do it. They had no choice than to go and work from home. They have seen their teams work from home through 2-month ends. Now, I would actually suspect that no company has experienced a half year or a year end in this context. I might be wrong, some might have a 31st of March finish, but I would say that the bulk do not. So as a result of that, we're in a situation where I don't think the bulk of organizations have actually experienced full pressure and stress from the top yet. The number one priority has been to make sure that everybody is safe and healthy and well. That is actually the number one score if you wanted to realistically look at this from a target perspective. But I'm pretty much certain that the boardroom for the last 6 weeks or so has also been doing the numbers on what's the cost of this business, what's the cost of its headcount versus the fact that its revenue and sales potentially, depending on what industry you're in, falling off a cliff. Some of them may actually have spiked during this period of time. You just think about where you've spent most of your time and energy between Tesco's and gardening centres in order to fill your time over the last few weeks. And Amazon, I'm sure, is having an absolute field day because it has the entire infrastructure to deliver to your door. So, excuse me, where you fall on the happiness curve depends on the level of responsibility you have within the organization, within the office, and indeed within your family itself. So that's where we start from. So I think you'll all agree that what we've actually had is a pretty traumatic event. The world hasn't experienced this. I appreciate it's gone through 2 world wars in the last century. But the pandemic of the Spanish flu in 1918 killed more people than the First World War, and it did it in less than 12 months. I would hope that we never ever see something like this again in our lifetime. But I also hope that we don't completely throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of how we work as a knee-jerk reaction to this. So we could all experience the trauma of this event, or if we roll nicely into the next slide, Chris, you'll see that there is actually an opportunity for what's known as post-traumatic growth. We don't have to look at this and go, oh my God, this is a real challenge. This is really difficult. I don't know what to do. I wasn't prepped for this. This is the first time you've been sent into a change environment with no preparation. Nobody really gave you any notice to it. I know we could say China incurred the experience first and all the rest of it. But really and truly, I don't think anybody on this call expected their companies to put in place full disaster recovery mode within days of the Prime Minister's announcement in March. I don't think anybody envisaged that. In terms of what I've done during the period I'm off, I've done 2 things. One, I've been writing another book about this type of stuff. But the second thing, I've looked at the whole area of personal development and personal growth and how you can actually take responsibility for yourself and thrive in a difficult environment. They say that the biggest millionaires make their money when the blood runs in the streets. I think we can take that and put a much softer organizational people culture focus around it and say that this is the opportunity for the middle management to grow. So if we ever so nicely roll on to the next slide, Chris. You see that the situation changes. Now, a lot of you will have heard at the moment, and indeed several of you on the call will have participated already in surveys done by a company run by HR, large Deloitte or Pulse-wide surveys. My advice to you is that this is the opportunity for middle management to grow. If you do not take this opportunity to grow, the approach will be inflicted upon you, okay? So to do that, you're going to have to take responsibility yourselves. And I actually seriously believe that there's about 3 steps you need to do, okay? And they're referred to as we play with the slide here in the smiley faces. The very first one is you need to have a good hard look at yourself. You need to ask yourself an internal survey. Did I enjoy lockdown personally, professionally? Would I enjoy lockdown if lockdown continues? Or would I enjoy lockdown if the scenario continued and I continued with remote working, but I could go into the office periodically as required? That very first set of questions is for you. And I'm not joking you, everybody's on this call will have different family arrangements. They will have different home working arrangements. They will have different views on how society should be run and the economy should be run. And indeed, they'll all exist in different types of organizations. Every one of you will potentially have a different answer. So the block answer is, on the surveys done initially, is that remote working is great. It works. Why shouldn't we continue with it? Now, I think before that's inflicted upon you, you need to pause. And that very first mirror up is against yourself. How did you really feel doing this? The second part is that you should take responsibility. I didn't have a graphic for it on this because I was just crowding the slide. You need to take responsibility for the individual debrief of your own teams. Once you've asked yourself, you must ask your teams. Narrow it down to about 3 questions. I don't think it needs to be any more than that. And engage with your teams, send them the questions, take their results in, and then talk to them. A lot of what happens when organizations do organization-wide surveys is that there's no immediate follow-up. And I'm guilty of this myself. I've stood in front of teams of 100 or so and told them the results, but I've not actually engaged with them one-to-one. Now, I appreciate that some of your teams will actually make this doable, the size of teams that you have. And I strongly encourage you to take the survey. Everybody who's a consultant at the moment is saying, we're surveying the staff, we're surveying the people on their responses to this. You need to take a survey of your own to your own team. And then when the opportunity presents itself, either in such a format such as this, or when you're back in the office potentially in the next week or two, you should have a good, honest chat with your teams. And I don't think that you should allow the approach to be inflicted upon you, or you to roll along with it, until such time as you've taken that pulse check yourself. You know your teams best, but most importantly of all, you know what your teams are tasked to deliver. So that brings me to the 3 M's. Now, if I was sitting in an audience environment, I'd allow you to start guessing, but since you're all on mute, the 3 M's stands quite simply for what is the most integral part of being a manager. The first is monitoring what is actually being delivered. Secondly is measuring it. And thirdly is taking corrective action through management in order to keep the direction on course so you deliver what you need to do. Now, those 3 M's have actually been altered in terms of how they're being done at the moment. And I would actually hazard a guess that you guys as credit managers have the best and most measurable output of any team in finance right across the piece. And you'll know whether the debtors days have gotten any worse. You'll know what the cash collection position is. You'll know whether this is working from your perspective or not, or whether you need more personal interactions in order to get a result and get an invoice paid and get the cash in. Those 3 M's, they're difficult to do. I spent 5 years working for one of the big 4 firms, and they taught me how to manage remote teams. And it entirely comes down to measurement. The softer side of it with regards to how people are, how they're feeling, their mental health, all the rest of it, I expect you to take on responsibility for monitoring that. But if you can't measure the output of your team and your process, you can't take any corrective action. So if we roll gently onto the next slide, there are the 3 tips I give you for yourselves. Look at you, talk to the team, and then, be able to manage remotely. So the next slide we've moved on to. See, this is the thing where Chris is running the slides instead of me. You went 1 second too quick for me there. So, I actually don't believe in remote working. I actually just going to put it out to you that I don't believe we should move from one extreme to the other. And the reason for that is my home is where my family is. My home is not where my office is. My home is not where my job is. And I don't possess, and no matter how qualified or experienced I am, a full desire to work or to be completely effective from this type of environment. I believe that the answer is actually a halfway house and a compromise. And the way in which I put this graphic together, at the very top I asked a question. We asked Peter. Now the Peter principle, as you all know, is that work expands to fill the time allotted for its performance. So for years we have lived in an environment which is, it's 9 to 5 and it's Monday to Friday. Now I just asked a question, why? And I'm pretty certain, listening to some of the people who came on the call in the opening 10 minutes, you guys have already started to question that yourselves. So here we are facing a new paradigm and we're questioning the location. For me, I think we need to take a step back from that and go, what do we actually need to deliver a job that allows us to work, rest and play? So I know it's the Mars slogan, but you need to be a certain age to remember it as well. You need to be able to create an environment which balances your home life and your own mental and physical health as well with the needs of the organization. And at the end of the day, folks, you don't exist So if you exist primarily to serve your family, the organization exists primarily to serve its shareholders and its profit, its bottom line. And what needs to happen is that some form of balance needs to meet in the middle. Now, there are two things that are definitely going to happen within the next couple of months that are completely and totally outside of your control. The first is, and the reason why this graphic works in a nice circle from the British pound sign around to the 3M, is that the economy has taken one hell of a battering. The open acknowledgement of that came in the Chancellor's communication, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and he was extending his scheme until October. Now, there's going to be an awful lot of people out of work. And they may not be out of work in your particular industry, and I'm pretty certain there will be winners and losers in this. Some industries will actually succeed and actually become more profitable, but I don't believe the bulk of them will, because I don't actually believe, in my experience, the bulk of companies were top of the range in the first place. There are more companies in this country than the FTSE 100. So the economy and the position that it's going in is actually going to be the #1 driver. The second thing that everybody has forgotten about, or they've nicely put to one side because we don't like to be hammered about it all the time, is that Brexit is still going to happen. And the Prime Minister has given his commitment that Brexit talks will continue in order to take place through the rest of the year. So you're going to be hit with a double whammy, an economy that was contracted in the first place, and it's losing one of its major markets. Whether you agree with the political decision to pull out or not, doesn't matter. It was always going to be a transformational phase to your economy, where you either move towards the businesses that you believed and could expand more into different markets or not, and just depending on what way you voted. The economy is going to drive this. The organizations themselves and their existing position before they rolled into this, whether they were stable or not, and the demands of the executive as they come out of it. So I'm urging you to take responsibility as middle managers and actually come up with some form of a halfway house, a compromise. The #1 word when I wrote all of the slides that I've got on the wall behind me or in front of me here was balance. If you go from an environment in which you've been working all the time in the office to go from an environment in which you all want to work from home, you've gone from one end of the spectrum to the other, and you've gone too quickly. In 20 odd years of running transformation projects, this doesn't work, not unless it's hammered home, and it always creates resentment. It's perfectly okay if when you do your internal survey and you marry its results up against a corporate company-wide survey, you agree that remote working is for your particular organization and for your team. Don't jump straight to it, okay? Phase it, do it sensibly. Don't go from one extreme where something was imposed upon you as a result of the quarantine to another extreme without really settling again. I always believe that change is done in waves. The first wave was imposed upon you. Now settle back, think, ask people, reflect upon the results and consult properly. And it may well be that remote working is the new norm for you, but it doesn't start till the 1st of September. What I propose as a suggestion, I'm throwing it out there, Ryan talks, gets you to stop and think. I actually firmly believe that you should go to the office. The office exists for a reason. And you want to be very, very careful that the organizations don't suddenly decide to make floor space savings that you're not going to easily reverse. So they'll think, okay, 60% of my workforce doesn't need to be in the office. I don't need half the offices, I'll get rid of them. These companies will make decisions to cut costs far faster than they will make decisions to reverse them. So knowledge is power, information is power. You must do the self-reflection and the talk to your team ASAP, and you must have a decent, intelligent conversation with your HR leadership on the corporate results and marry them up. And don't jump to this as a result. There are lovely benefits to both remote working and indeed a halfway house of 5 days a week in the office, 10 to 3. You get the family time, you get the reduced commute, you get the reduced pressure on yourselves, but you also build something that's absolutely critical to successful transformation, and you build team spirit. Now, I've managed teams, sporting teams in the tracksuit this morning, I've managed corporate teams, and shared responsibility and shared challenge leads to a better team in order to face the next set of challenges. When you have a team which is split in two, and some of you will be encouraged to do this, where you rotate your teams through the office, you will see a team A, team B mentality start to build up. I would be very careful about that, or I would rotate the individuals who are actually doing it. I'm a huge believer that people require to interact with people, one, in order to feel normal and healthy and actually deal with their mental health aspects, but secondly, to get a result. How many times have you been on one of these calls where you're jockeying with the other person as to who gets to speak? So we have 25 odd people on this call this morning. You're listening to me. You'll get an opportunity for questions, but you guarantee you won't all get an opportunity for questions. Yeah. You will reflect maybe on the slides and come back to me with some questions. A conversation where you sit down with someone where it's just a coffee in the office or in the canteen is generally far more effective than these means of communication. So I'm a huge believer in the person-to-person, and that has quite a massive impact on the team spirit of the teams themselves. Now, there's something for you to watch as we go through this. Some organizations have already made their decision. So I've heard during the week, Direct Line are going with 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. That might seem like a nice compromise, actually, to be honest with you. And then the 3 top tech giants from the States, as I mentioned earlier, Twitter and Google, they don't want their staff back in the office in 2020. I'll give you a small story with regards to Google. When Google was originally set up, it of course did this, where it had all its top engineers who designed the new work, or the new applications all working in Starbucks and all working at home. And then they brought in a top class CEO, and they changed it in an instant. He said, if I'm to build team spirit, corporate identity, corporate culture, and get everyone to share the vision to move forward, I want you all in together. You bond. That's how teams work. Now, if you work individually, you might just go, I'm perfectly okay, I can work from home. And that's fine. But an organization is by its nature a team. It is more than one. If it was only one, it would exist in your attic, in which case it could blissfully work from home. But that brings me around the little circle back to the 3M. You guys, in my honest opinion, I was saying this to Chris earlier, an army doesn't march on its stomach, it actually marches on its sergeants. You are actually the sergeants of your organizations. You're the ones who will have to discipline any change into your teams. You have to deliver them. So you need to be very careful, or you're very comfortable with the 3Ms that they work in any new environment for you. And my own personal belief is that we need a halfway house which is comfortable for all, and that we reinvent the working day. We don't reinvent the working location. Have I another slide, Chris? So there we go. 20 odd minutes, I believe. So is the genie out of the bottle? Is remote working the new normal, or do you want to go with the new happy instead? Or, as I teach practically everybody I've ever coached to anything, make your own decision and be strong enough to stand up for yourself in your own organization and put it across. There's nothing wrong with being the outlier in an equation. Do not go with the herd. Do not go with the tribal mentality to this. Because at the end of the day, the surveys that are being done at the moment are appealing to the base. The base of the pyramid is driving the change by telling you that remote working is great. It's the middle of the pyramid that has to be asked the question. It's the one that has to deliver at the front end, at the coal face, to make this work. And I'm pretty much certain that delivering transformational change in any of your organizations as the economy is battered through 2 major threats is going to be one hell of a challenge and extremely difficult to do if your staff are divided between being remotely based and being in the office, or entirely in remote based. That's my opinion, folks. I think I've taken through most of that, Chris. I think I've covered everything we said we would.
Yeah, we have.
I'm happy to open it to the floor. The last slide gives you my email address. It also gives you my personal phone number. If you want to discuss any of the aspects of this in confidence, I'm quite happy to do so. As I said at the start, I'm not interested in selling you anything. My next role will be to take over some class of a shared service center. So if you want advice with regards to how you're going through your particular challenge, I'm quite happy to give it to you. You're welcome to phone me. I always find the conversations interesting. I'll give you as much of my experience as possible.
Yeah, so if anybody wants copies of this deck, I mean, there's the email and the phone number there. If you want copies of the deck, as always, just let me know and I'll get them out to you later on today. Let me just stop sharing so we've got everybody on the, so we can see most people on the screens here.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions, comments from anybody for Michael while we're on? Okay.
So
great.
if I can ask it as a question instead, how are your own particular organizations gathering? How many of you are actually effectively taking surveys at the moment of your own staff with regards to remote working?
We Matt, we've done Michael, we've done a wellbeing survey.
Okay.
Which came in 5 out of 10.
And just explain to me, so how did you interpret the result?
We've not had the feedback yet, but we all, as a European business, we all went on furlough, went on home working when our Italian office did, which was before the UK. So we've been at home since the beginning of March.
Okay.
How has it been interpreted? People are missing each other.
Yes.
And the camaraderie of the office.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's been difficult, and certainly the collectors, when they've had a difficult call, they can't turn to the person next to them to de-stress and hug and whatever. So that's been the biggest one for us.
And that's actually, I fully agree with that. The base of the teams will generally be the lowest paid. They're the ones that look to you for leadership. So it's not just about team spirit and being in the office together and being able to turn to your mate. It's that you look up to somebody who's a role model. All of your, as management layers go up in an organization, they should all be role models. They should look to you and go, okay, right, I'm out of my depth at this point. You can help me. Now, if they're going to do that remotely, they're into scheduling a call with you, which is a bit tricky. And there's a whole management or a whole interpersonal interaction thing, which has completely stopped since we left the office. The amount of people in my teams who would be not afraid to come up to me if they saw me, and they might take me aside into an office and go, there's something I'm concerned about, and they'll chat to me because I can be reassuring to enable them to unburden how they're feeling. That's difficult when you actually have to put an email together to your boss and go, can we schedule a call to discuss this, this, and this? You put it down on paper, and that kind of intimidates younger, less experienced staff. So the interpersonal aspect of this is highly important, not just for the mental health of the people in terms of their interactions, because, you know, if you run a good team, work is fun. It should be fun to see your teammates. I always tell people, don't be bored the backside off me in terms of running your teams. You know, it has to be fun. Otherwise, I'm not coming into the office. I'm not managing you. So, you know, we're people at the end of the day. Let's get a kick out of it. Let's interact with each other. I appreciate that there are many, and there's probably a few examples on the call of individuals who are part of European-wide or even global organizations. And by their very nature, you communicate with your global colleagues. You do it exactly in this format all the time. Otherwise, it costs the business a fortune. I generally find through all the projects that I run that even though that becomes the means by which we communicate, it started by us meeting in person. Now, I appreciate when it comes to international travel, that's a whole other ball game, and it won't be until September, October time, I'd say, before that settles down. But you can't put a price on a handshake. You can't put a price on the ability to make a personal connection with somebody and an interaction with somebody. And that to me is fundamental to what organizations from a people perspective are about. Has anybody got any other thoughts? What other experiences of other people have?
Jason, you left a comment, Jason.
I did, yes. Sorry, I haven't got my video on. I'm in the office, and we've been having special backgrounds, but I've just put my video on now. Yeah, I work for local government, and you know, we've had very clear guidelines, obviously, that it is business as usual. It's really important to provide those services to our vulnerable citizens. And as part of the income collection function, we've also had it made very clear that it's business as usual, and we need to collect that money. And obviously, we've obviously got staff working remotely, making essentially, you know, cold calls. But what we've found is that actually calls coming into the authority are far more productive in terms of a result and a resolution. So getting a random call from somebody who says they're from Essex, for example, so it has been enlightening, and I really take on board what you said about the first wave, it's been imposed on us. So we've all reacted on to things, and we've kind of come up with some solutions. But going forward, I think we've really got to think about how we go forward long term.
Yeah. And I think that's very important, because in my entire experience as a transformation manager, when you impose change, it doesn't work. Now, if a company is distressed and it must make bottom line savings, it imposes changes, and it's a fight. It's this, okay? What you want to achieve is this, and we all go in the same way. Now, that's not easily done, and the key to it is time and engagement. So I would not like to see people jump to the result, because it's a Twitter answer to a very, very important question. You're going to fundamentally change how large-scale organizations, the bedrock of the economy, work. You don't do that off the basis of what's the latest trending tweet. You engage your brain, and then you bring it back to the personal, to yourself and to your own team. And you're best placed to tell, when you get your answers from your team, which ones, to be honest about it, as I deal with a management audience here, that you could discount. You need to come up with the best size to fit all. So at the moment, the millennials are sitting there going, this is great, pollution's down, I don't have to commute, I can work in Starbucks, I told you all along, this is what I want. Some organizations will, I guarantee you, use this as a talent pitch for recruitment. I wouldn't fall into that pitfall, because you're getting then something that you don't necessarily want. You haven't actually decided yet what you want. So generally, we don't let executives out of the boardroom with regards to a transformation project until they've agreed the vision. Now, very, very simplistically, this gets downlined to the staff in a paragraph or a couple of lines or some catchy words. But in truth, a lot of thought should go into that, because it's how you're trying to put across the direction of travel that the company is going to go in. People are going to listen to it, they're going to take it on board. So you need to take the time to get it right. The initial building block is far more important than launching into the rest of it. And I firmly believe, having managed at this stage every variation of a finance team, you guys are the ones I would actually have my hand around your throat. Where's my cash coming from? And how am I best placed to support you to deliver, so that you guys are happy, they've experienced some change, but not complete change, and that they feel engaged with and listened to, and that you're supporting of them. And it's very important for you guys to articulate to your teams the positives of office working. Yeah? So again, it comes back to the self-reflection. Did you enjoy it? Okay? And at the end of the day, you get paid a premium more than the team for a reason. So your opinion is actually more important.
Okay.
Any other thoughts?
Just checking a few of the comments here. Great presentation, thanks. I need to jump on another call now. Thanks, Josh. Have a good day.
You're welcome.
For Rebecca from Atradia, I certainly miss the office. I know my team do, especially the support provided when the office environment is not the same online. I think the key point, as mentioned by Michael, is the distinction between work and home. Not being able to separate the two has proved difficult for some people, including myself. Rebecca Price-Palmer from Eric's. We are running company-wide surveys, but I have not even thought about looking at my team, my individual team. So there's some stuff to do there, I think, for everybody. Okay, I'm going to I'm just going to say thanks very much, Michael, for your time today. I'm going to pause the presentation now. We can carry on talking afterwards, but I just wanted to pause and stop the recording now. So thanks very much, Michael. This will be on the CICMQ.
Can I leave you with one comment?
Yes, please do.
Before you pause the presentation, first of all, thank you for inviting me on. Secondly, thank you to all of your attendees who came on. And I'll leave you with one thing that's come out of every single personal development book I've read in the last 2 months, is that in order to make a change stick with an individual, you must perform the change for 30 consecutive days. And if you don't successfully perform it for 30 consecutive days, it has not actually changed you. Bear that in mind when you consider the time frame you've just gone through.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you for your time.